Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is allowance. Again, we're doing some wordplay here, but we talk a lot about allowing, and it brought up the notion of allowance as, you know, the kids get an allowance or we get an allowance, and what does that mean and how does that word apply in these different contexts. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, your electrons, bringing light into your body so that you create a beam of brilliant illumination out from your heart into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms, feeling the tickling, the tingling, the sensation, and allow that wonderful sensation to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. So good to have you here with us this morning. It's great to be here with you. And Rosalind says, the yoga of allowing, different from waiting. Indeed, it is. Allowing is different from waiting. And there's an expansiveness to allowing, where we make space for what is unfolding. And when we think about allowance in that context, it's expansive, it's unbounded. And I want to contrast that a little to the notion of an allowance that we get paid, where there's a bounded amount of money, for instance, or maybe of products. Maybe there's a food allowance on a diet, right? There's a food allowance for different foods, a calorie allowance, for example. Maybe in times when things are being somewhat rationed, there's a one to a customer kind of thing. Or back from when we were experiencing gas shortages, you could only fill up a certain amount of gallons kind of thing. So it's interesting to me that we think about the word allowance as a bounded thing. When we think about it as a noun, we think about it as a bounded thing. And when we think about it as a verb, well, it's not really a verb when we think about the verb allow, but when we think about allowance in terms of our ability to allow, it's an unbounded thing. It's an expansive thing. And so I'm fascinated by our language, English, at least, in the what seems like a multitude of contradictions or opposite meanings in the same word. And allowing has become a very talking about the art of allowing it has become a very popular kind of conversation. What does allowing really mean? It means giving permission, granting permission, giving consent, according to the dictionary. But I think when we talk about allowing, it's more complex than giving consent. It's an active, like Rosalind says, the yoga of allowing. It's got an active and a passive element to it all at once, right? Allowing is relinquishing control, relinquishing the need to control, and allowing the opening, creating an opening for things to unfold. And Rosalind says, allowing no attachment to the outcome. And so if there's no attachment to the outcome, thank you for that, Rosalind. If there's no attachment to the outcome, it also may be that there's no focus on the outcome. And Rosalind says contentment. So it is a state of beingness, I think. And it may be that it's contentment, but it is a state of openness, maybe of gentle anticipation, maybe not even any anticipation. It's really being more in presence, right? To be allowing the moments to unfold as they do. And I'm wondering, it feels like it's also a suspension of judgment, right? And it's a non-resistance. So maybe are those the two sides of allowing, the allowing versus non-resistance, or versus resistance. So resistance lives on all kinds of levels, right? We can be resisting circumstances as they are because we're holding a vision of how we prefer it to be, and that's a tricky dynamic, because we know that holding the experience of the vision that we're intending helps to bring that into manifestation. I guess the key question there is, how do we do that in such a way that we're not resisting what is? There are so many of these edges that we get to explore. It's interesting because in permaculture they say that the edges are where life resides. That's where the dynamics are. The edges are where evolution takes place, where there are seeds for possibility, these transition places. And as we talk about allowance, what does that feel like, to be allowing? As I feel into my body, when I think of allowing, what I notice is a relaxation. What I notice is an opening of the heart. What I notice is an ease, which goes to what you were saying, Rosalind, about contentment, perhaps. But there is a peacefulness in maybe in trusting, maybe part of the foundation of allowing is trusting that things are unfolding in their perfection, trusting that we're safe, trusting that it's all okay in any given moment, that we're okay in any given moment. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation with you guys is because we do talk about allowing a lot, and allowance, essentially. What is this thing, allowance? We don't often really talk about the details of it. We don't really delve into it when we talk about we need to allow, or we're in a process of allowing the unfoldment of life in its intelligence and in its context and beauty. And by the way, if you guys are putting in comments and I'm not responding to it, it's because I don't see the comments. So if you want your comments to be seen, go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page or the Enlightened World Network YouTube channel. You can put your comments in there. So Rosalind says we can still have desires, but resistance to any other version of the outcome is projecting. Then that is suffering. Allowing is not trying to flatline emotions. Exactly. Good morning, Robin. Welcome. It's great to have you here with us. So back to Rosalind's comments. We can still have desires, but resistance to any other version of the outcome is projecting. So when we, and then Rosalind says, then that's suffering. So it's true that our suffering comes from our resisting what's present, right? Resisting based on our perceptions, resisting the way that things are. And it's interesting to be being in both spaces of visioning what's possible and being present to what is without resistance. We don't necessarily have to focus on what is, particularly if it's undesired. But if we can shift our focus without resisting the prevailing circumstance, that's the art, is to be visioning our intended state, or intending while not resisting what is existing. It's a mouthful. Okay, so allowing is not trying to flatline emotions, right? Because if you're trying to flatline the emotions, if you're trying not to do something, or you're trying to do something, then all of that is resistance, is creating resistance versus actually doing something. When we're in the flow of things and having inspired doing, there is no resistance. We're continuing to be that unimpeded expression of inspiration and of life, right? So how do you move into a state of allowance, or a state of allowing? And this just came to mind. We were talking earlier about how maybe you had an allowance or have an allowance. If you're on a budget, you're giving yourself an allowance, and that's a bounded thing. But on another aspect, or in another way, it is a gift that you're giving yourself, right? Or it's almost, you get to expect that allowance. You expect that bounty. And it may not even be interpreted as bounty after a point, but if we look at it as a gift, we can look at how by allowing, we are giving ourselves an unbounded allowance, an unbounded gift of connecting beyond ourselves, of flowing with life, of being able to receive life's gifts, its bounty. And that may be our allowance. When we allow, we have this unlimited source of energy, inspiration, possibility. And that takes the whole notion of having an allowance to a whole new level, right? Where we can feel abundant in that allowance, because the allowing, as we go back full circle, is unbounded, right? So Rosalind says, allow self to experience the spectrum of emotions with no judgment. Exactly. It's the judgment that anchors those emotions. It's the judgment that creates resistance to those emotions, that is then creating an impediment to their natural flow. So continuing with Rosalind's comment, contentment requires the background of silence to be expressed. Silence is not the absence of noise. It's the essence of all. We all have presences. Freedom is to enjoy or be happy and unhappy at the same time. Is to enjoy our being happy and unhappy at the same time. So that sounds like a koan, Rosalind. So to be happy and unhappy at the same time. I think Rosalind says we all have preferences. So the spectrum of emotions, maybe I don't know what it would be like to be happy and unhappy at the same time. It's kind of this idea of multitasking. What I understand about multitasking, whether it's true or not, I feel like we can hold multiple things at the same time, and that we can actually multitask. But what I've heard about that is that we're switching focus rapidly from one thing to another when we're multitasking, that we're focused on this, then this, then this, then this, and it's not focusing on everything all at once. So I wonder if that's the same with these variety of emotions, that we're not actually experiencing them at the same time in terms of happy and unhappy, given that they're polarities kind of, but that maybe we flip between them. And I wonder what would make that flipping happen is our thinking, probably, the way that we shift our mindset. I've seen it, speaking about how our minds affect our emotions, I've seen in session work, it's so interesting, where in the core connection work, I've noticed that emotions evolve much more quickly. Our emotional response to things evolves and shifts and changes much more with greater facility than our ideas, our mental constructs. They take longer to transform than our emotional responses to things. And so, people who have felt sad or angry a lot in their lives, for instance, in a session will move through, and their response to a certain input is radically transformed, for instance, from anger to neutrality, for example. And they still have the idea that they are angry as a beingness, when in fact their response has shifted and they haven't yet adapted to their new beingness. So it's very interesting. And relating to this word allowance, I just had another thought where we have the phrase make allowances for. So making allowances for someone kind of sounds like excuses in a way, unless it's given generously, right? Although I don't like the feeling that it's hierarchical somehow, to be making allowances for someone. Like I'm in a place where I'm in a hierarchy. I'm making allowances for them, like as an excuse that they are less capable or something for some reason. In that context, I wonder about the merits of such a thing. I think that the tone of making allowances for another is not quite fully just, somehow is not respectful of the quality of the other somehow. I mean, you might feel differently about that. I'm just playing with these ideas. And I love that we have this forum to play with these things together, because it really, truly, allowing has become so much a part of our current evolutionary path, is learning how to allow. And it doesn't mean complacency. It doesn't mean inactivity. It doesn't mean taking no action. Rosalind says, being in the moment is having no resistance to the present moment. Exactly. And that's really what we're coming to, what we're getting to is, and all roads lead to presence is really what it comes down to. Rosalind continues, once you're aware what's being felt, not thinking or interpreting exactly, then you're motivated by a desire to do something to relieve the suffering. So I was with you up until the very last piece. Once you're aware of what's being felt, then you're motivated by a desire to do something to relieve the suffering. So the doing of the something is the thing that I'm questioning a little bit. So one of the things is that really truly does alleviate suffering is when we presence ourselves to what is being felt, and allow ourselves to presence ourselves to that without the thinking and the interpreting, because it's the interpreting and the thinking that really creates the suffering. So even if we're in pain, we can be experiencing pain and not necessarily be suffering, because the suffering comes in when we start trying to resist the pain or believing that it should be different from something else rather than being in the experience of that moment. That's the resistance, right? And there may, in recognizing I'm sitting this way and I'm feeling pain, maybe if I shift my position, the pain goes away. So there is action. And I think that it, as you're saying, Rosalind, that action comes from awareness. So we've done some circles today talking about allowing and awareness and presence and the unbounded gift of abundance of an allowance from the universe that is unlimited. Anyway, always fun to have these conversations. And Rosalind, thank you so much for engaging, and thank you so much to everybody else who's joined us this morning for this morning musing. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN, One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. And until next time, so much love and appreciation to you. And I hope to see you again here really soon.